beneficial to, we all have stories. We were born, we were adopted, this and that, and when our parents did this and that. When is it beneficial to actually look at that? You always say, just find a better thought. It's almost, don't worry about the past.
We would tell every satisfying thing that you remember.
So just don't even go there with anything that was negative, or I don't know. I'm just I don't know how to verbalize the question, but I know you feel it.
You did really well. Everyone got it. So here's the thing. Let's just say it this way. You do all your work, you do all your creating in step one. So all that contrast sifting is when you do your creating. Getting in the receiving mode is when you let it in. That's when you let what you've created turn into something that is more tangible and ultimately more satisfying. It's nice to be loved, but it is so delicious to have an object of your attention to flow your love to. And so we like manifestations for you. We tease people as they're coming together wanting to become partners. Each of them, as they've rendezvoused, has been in a similar or same vibrational place, and law of attraction has brought them together. And let's say they're really high-flying and they like the feeling of each other. And we say, receiving mode, and you're all together in the receiving mode. And then they do that human thing. Tell me about yourself. And we are yelling, no, don't do it. Because when you begin telling about yourself, you usually feel that it's important to tell the significant things of your life. And the significant things of your life, this is good, were important because they did launch significant rockets. And so if when you think about that subject you are completely satisfied, then that means that significant contrast caused a significant rocket, which caused significant life experience, and you are satisfied in all of that. And when you tell that story, all you do is reinforce and enhance and add to the satisfaction. And those stories are so good. So maybe what we're saying is just tell the stories that had happy endings.
Just forget about the rest.
Because a lot of times people, instead of looking for the satisfaction factor for themselves, they're trying to entertain others. Or, this is what usually happens. You see, if you've practiced being under the influence of the receiving mode, then the stories that occur to you are those kinds of stories. But if you've been under the influence of struggle, then everybody you meet, you'll feel like telling them the stories of your struggles. And that's not helpful to them, but it may seem perfectly logical because they're resonating with you. Esther has a few friends now who are comedians, active comedians that are performing. And every one of them talks about being able to read the audience because they want to find the audience where they are and play to where they are. And we say, we are not sure why you call it comedy. In that case, because if your audience is sort of angry or belligerent or disappointed or less than satisfied, then what's going to occur to you are those kinds of things. And it's sort of nice to build bridges for them. Sometimes that helps. But we don't want you to get so good at reading the room. We don't want you to get so good at reading the vibration of someone else that you then lower your vibrational frequency so that you can have a meaningful conversation. And yet for humans, you want others to get you. You want to be understood. You want them to get you. You want them to understand you. And in most cases, that means for most of you, if you are going to relate with most humans, you got to lower your vibration way down because most of them are not up here where you are, not very often, not unless they're still babies. That was good, wasn't it? Did we get to what you were looking for?
Yes, and then working with clients, when I first talk to them, I ask them, why are you here? And we talk very briefly about their issue, and then I tell them, thanks to you, that we're never going to talk about where they are again. We're going to move forward and talk about where they want to be and focus on that and their thoughts. And there's a belief clearing exercise that I do that what do you want? And we come up with that statement, and then you list what the reasons are. Why can't you have that? And I know when I hear you talk, that kind of sets them backwards, and then you have to move them up forwards again. So then the end result is to find a better feeling thought that they can take away with them and they can stay on a regular basis. So is it beneficial to do that why?
Maybe,
That's
but
what goes back to that.
you need a
Is it-
starting place. And sometimes as you regurgitate that, they launch their rockets again and you can get a bead on what they really want. In other words, there's no right or wrong in this. You're feeling your way through it too. Just don't let them convince you of their difficulties. Because if you get under the influence of them and their difficulties, you have nothing to offer them. But here's the thing. Once you teach them a few basics and you're consistent enough in what you offer and what you teach through the clarity of your example, not just your words, what will happen is, as their life experiences come to them, they will have moments of recognition. Everyone is in a current state of perception about different subjects. You just have these habits of thoughts. They're your belief systems, but it's your perspective. It's how you perceive the world to be. You just weren't born with it. You were born with the perspective that we talk about the babies having is, oh, this is going to be fun and there's lots for me to choose from and I create my own reality and I'm eager to get to it. But as you pick things up along your physical trail, sometimes you practice and habitually keep thoughts and vibrations going that don't serve you. But then once you catch a glimpse of the laws of the universe and you get a little different vantage point, that's the advantage that Esther gives you, in that as we offer her blocks of thought, because she didn't have a religious bias and she didn't have a political bias, she didn't have any biases, she was just bipping along living happily ever after. So with being basically bias-free, as she began to tune to the frequency of us and was adept at translating our vibrational frequency into words, it created a new vocabulary that, since you hadn't heard much of that before, you didn't have your own biases against it, not so much. So it's easier for you to find your new way of looking at things because it was new territory. Let's put it that way. We're going to tell you a story. We've been telling this for a couple of weeks, but it really speaks to what you're talking about. So Esther has a house and a guest house. We were talking about it in Del Mar. And she lives in the upper house, and the lower house is for family and friends who visit with her. And so she had been gone for months, and she got settled into her new environment. And as she sat at her desk, which is in her living room facing out, it has an ocean view. And she was working on something. She looked up and she realized her ocean view was gone. It was covered up by the trees that had grown on the fence line. So the gardeners came that day and she said to them, I've covered up my own ocean view. Could you trim those trees back and open it up again for me? And they said, yes, happily, we'll do that. And then one of them said, it's not just the fence line. There's a tree down in the ravine that's blocking part of that. And Esther said, well, I only own half that ravine, so just make sure that whatever we cut is on my property. And he said, we'll get your view back. And Esther gave him thumbs up. And off she went with a friend to lunch. So they were gone for a few hours. They had lunch and did some shopping. And when she came back, she walked up onto her deck and she looked out and, oh, the ocean was back. It was so beautiful, such a beautiful day. She went inside and sat at her desk. Yes, yes, yes. And then she saw something that took her breath away in a different way. There were two very large tree stumps off there in the distance, cut all the way to the ground. Not on her property. Really close to the fence line of this other property, who clearly owned to the center of the ravine from where they are. And Esther thought, oh, how could that have happened? How could have they not understood what I said? And then she felt so bad. She thought, maybe I just wanted my view so much that the universe figured out to get it to me no matter what. In other words, she couldn't believe that had happened. And she thought, I'm going to jail. And then she rationalized. She thought, well, this is a house that's under renovation. And so maybe it's new owners and maybe they don't know those trees were there. And so she tried to forget about it. She tried to distract herself and did a good job of it. And then a couple of days later, she looked out and there was a man in a suit standing out on that patio, looking at those tree stumps. Then he took his phone out and took a picture. And Esther thought, okay, time to fess up. So she didn't know how to get to that house that's across the ravine. She didn't know if it was a road from the bottom that went up or a road from the top that went down. So it took her a while to get there. And all the way over, she practiced her speech. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to do that. I'll make it up to you in any way you want. I'll plant new trees. I'll plant your whole yard. I am so sorry. I did not mean to do that. And so she had her speech ready and she got there and she went into the house and there were lots of people in there putting plaster on the walls and all kinds of other things. And she said, there was a man in a suit standing out on the patio a few minutes ago. Wait, is he still here? No, he left. No one had a contact number for him, and Esther went home feeling like she was wanting to apologize for what she had done. So the next day, same friend came. They went to lunch. And when they came back, Esther said, "Come with me." And they went, this time through the lower house, out to the edge, and Esther pointed to those trees, and she said, "Look what I did." He said, "What?" She said, "My gardeners cut those trees down so that I could have a view. I didn't mean for it to happen." And he looked and he said, "Esther, your gardeners didn't just cut those trees down while we were at lunch yesterday. The hillside's not torn up, and where's the debris from the trees?" And Esther thought, And then they walked out to the edge and looked up closer to her house, and there was a very small tree cut all the way to the ground, and all the debris from the tree was laying all down right around it. And all that had happened is they'd cut down a tree so Esther could see things that she couldn't see before, or that she hadn't noticed before. That shook Esther up, because when she thought about it, it was so irrational that she had believed that those two guys could have cut down those great big trees in a few hours and hauled everything away. But the circumstantial evidence pointed right at that. She believed that. She believed the ridiculous. And the reason it shook her up is she said, "I'll bet there's way more dumb stuff I believe. Way more irrational things that I believe. Way more things that I've just been believing that no longer apply to me, that I keep active." That's really what we're getting at here, is everyone has a perspective, and their perspective is what it is. And as a teacher, it's really not your job to understand what everybody's perspective is. It's your job to hold your perspective. Esther's friend said, first of all, that was illogical that that would happen to you, that you would do that. It was illogical to him that that would happen to her. Well, apparently it wasn't that illogical to Esther, because she thought she had done it. So apparently Esther has more guilt about herself than her friend has about her. You see what we're getting at? Everyone has these vibrations that you've practiced, many of which do not serve you. And through understanding the laws of the universe, by understanding what satisfaction means, by knowing that there is a vibrational reality, by expecting that you can receive guidance and impulses, by knowing that your inner being knows where you stand in relationship to everything you want and is there eagerly and lovingly guiding you. When you know those things, then when life experiences come, it's possible for you to process them, and it's possible for that belief to be bridged. So a big thing happened. In other words, you might say, well, that was a pretty uncomfortable few days for Esther. And it was. She felt bad. She did not like the thoughts that she was having about herself. They were not satisfying thoughts at all. But it sure led to something wonderful. There was a bigger, deeper understanding. It led to her realizing that she does hold beliefs, not meaning to, practiced thoughts that don't serve, that feelings of dissatisfaction are always pointing right at every single time. No exception. Every time you feel dissatisfied, it's your guidance system pointing right at something that you believe that's in your way every single time. And you might say, no, it's pointing out something that happened. Well, then you're believing something about something that happened. In other words, it makes no difference whether it's real. If you sit on a park bench and you feel all freaked out like you think there's a monster in the bushes, and you say, what should I do? We say, get off the bench. But eventually you'll come to feel your well-being, and you'll be guided only where there is well-being, and then you'll live happily ever after. Did we get there?
Yes, thank you so much.